Chapter 2. The Intelligence Tools People Paradigm. Quote, "The most insidious enemy in security is routine," unquote. Jerry Parr, U.S. Secret Service agent. Every time I see a framework on a PowerPoint slide, I visibly roll my eyes. It doesn't matter how good or bad the framework is or isn't. The trouble is that we have way too many frameworks, and many of them lack practical applicability or are too simplistic for the job at hand. The most popular is people, process, and technology. But I've seen frameworks with up to 8 strategic pillars. It's a problem that I loathe to admit I have contributed to over the years. But wait, doesn't this chapter title indicate another framework is forthcoming? My goal is to introduce 3 crucial concepts to improve our supply chains: intelligence, tools, and people. I'm not suggesting that these are the only strategic concepts needed in the future. I am simply drawing a laser focus on our requirement to develop new muscles for these capabilities and de-emphasize others. For example, process management is less relevant in a generative AI world where predefining hundreds or thousands of processes is anachronistic at best. I will let you, as the reader, or other consultants, wrap them into a framework. Rawhide down. On March 30th, 1981, a high-humidity 65-degree cloudy day, newly elected U.S. President Ronald Reagan walked out of the Washington, D.C. Hilton Hotel VIP entrance. As he approached the nearby limo, he turned to his left and waved at a group of approximately 30 reporters and press representatives. That's when 6 shots rang out in quick succession from a gun fired by John Hinckley Jr., who was hiding in the throng of reporters. In an instant, James Brady, Reagan's press secretary, was hit in the head and fell to the ground, while police officer Thomas Delante took a bullet in the back and fell to the ground. The third shot went sailing over Reagan's head. Upon hearing the shots rang out, Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy did the most unnatural human act of whipping around and extending his body to protect the president. In the process, he took a bullet in the chest. The 5th shot hit the limousine door, and the 6th shot hit the driveway. The next Secret Service agent, Jerry Parr, walking with the president, threw Reagan into the limo as the shots were fired. As they entered the car, the 6th bullet ricocheted off the limousine and hit Reagan under the left arm, puncturing a lung. Secret Service agents rushed Reagan to the emergency room for surgery, and the president emerged from the entire ordeal seemingly stronger than ever. There are many lessons to learn from this incident. However, there are an equal number of uncomfortable questions. According to historian Del Quentin Wilbur in his book Rawhide Down, The Near Assassination of Ronald Reagan, quote, "After the president's arrival at the Hilton, Hinckley had walked into the hotel's lobby and loitered there for a while, the gun still in his pocket. Then he'd returned to the rope line and waited with the others in the crowd. Hinckley saw Reagan emerge from the VIP entrance. Unbelievably, the president was completely out in the open and Reagan would pass right in front of him. 2 police officers turned away toward Reagan. A Secret Service agent looked at the ground. Nobody was paying any attention to him. He knew that he would never get another chance as good as this one. He pulled the gun from his pocket." How did a random person just walk up to the press line, mere feet from the president, pull out a gun, and nearly assassinate the leader of one of the world's 2 superpower countries? Also, why was nobody paying attention to activity in the crowd? The policemen were looking at Reagan, not the crowd, and the Secret Service agent was looking at the ground. Perhaps most concerningly, few of the agents or police officers, including the wounded ones, wore bulletproof vests, either due to the weather or the fact that it was supposed to be a, quote, "local trip to the Hilton," unquote. How do we protect a president? These days, the U.S. Secret Service has a zero-fail mission statement when it comes to protecting the president. Failure to protect the president has catastrophic global consequences, but also shines a spotlight on Secret Service failures, including the Reagan assassination attempt. Imagine a job where your performance, or lack thereof, could influence the course of history. So the question is, how do we protect a president? I ask this question because it serves as a useful metaphor for supply chain risk management. When it comes to protecting the president or other such dignitary, typically we think of bodyguards or Secret Service agents. That's largely because we see these protectors as the main line of defense in movies and on TV. In these representations, the protagonist is usually a physically fit bodyguard, and that's not far from real life. However, humans are the most expensive and valuable assets. If the Secret Service agents are getting into the action, such as shooting their guns or acting as human shields, something has gone terribly wrong. According to Jonathan Wackrow, former Secret Service agent, COO and global head of security for Teneo Risk and a law enforcement analyst for CNN, to protect the president, we must think in terms of concentric circles of protection. An inner ring, direct human protection around the president. A middle ring, physical security limiting access through narrowing, police, metal detectors, decoys, alternative entrances, loading docks, covered entrances, HVAC protection, and so on. An outer ring, data and intelligence to identify potential threats through signal monitoring, situational analysis, route design, and location selection. All of this to protect one person. However, it's a model that also applies to protecting supply chains, as I'll explain more in detail. Security theater of the absurd. On March 13, 2020, in response to the rapidly unfolding coronavirus pandemic, the Transportation Security Administration rescinded its 3.4-ounce limit for hand sanitizer on planes. This change allowed travelers to bring up to 12 ounces of hand sanitizer. The next day, Dan Kois, editor and writer at Slate, skewered the TSA and much of American policy for its capriciousness. The TSA's rule change showed just how arbitrary their 3.4-ounce limit was, and that risk to airline passengers had nothing to do with the amount of hand sanitizer allowed on planes. Kois was making a broader statement about how fear and punishment become tools to benefit power structures, primarily governments, instead of citizens. In the process, Kois highlighted a larger and more concerning question about airline security. If I can bring 12 ounces of hand sanitizer on a plane, a substance that is 99% alcohol, then why can I not bring 12 ounces of shampoo, conditioner, or water? In fact, the deeper we look into the TSA operations, especially in comparison to the Secret Service protective methodology of intelligence, tools, and people, the more it becomes clear that airport security in America is for show. As noted security expert and author Bruce Schneier points out, quote, security is both a feeling and a reality. The propensity for security theater comes from the interplay between the public and its leaders. When people are scared, they need something done that will make them feel safe, even if it truly doesn't make them safer. Politicians naturally want to do something in response to crisis, even if that something doesn't make any sense, unquote. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, U.S. politicians federalized airport security. Before 9/11, airlines contracted their own private security services. Almost overnight, 45,000 federal employees took responsibility for American airport security. Government planners went to great lengths to create the stage on which the TSA performed its grand security ballet. TSA checkpoints enforced an invisible compliance by pushing travelers through a series of physical cues, lines snaking around stations, plexiglass dividers, podiums staffed by agents who physically look down on all who approach, passengers taking off shoes and belts, etc. The charade continues with the officer uniforms, which are designed to mimic law enforcement attire. Transportation security officers are dressed in, quote, properly fitting uniforms, unquote, that include royal blue shirts, heavy boots, brass badges, and shoulder boards denoting rank. When a traveler approaches a TSA checkpoint, the whole experience is meant to confer a look and feeling of law enforcement. The problem with this choreography is that it's nothing more than a facade. It's security theater. Transportation security officers have no law enforcement standing or training. They are not authorized to carry firearms, make arrests, or do anything other than to detain passengers and call law enforcement officers when issues arise. In addition, the TSA does not prevent access. To get to the quote-unquote secure side of the airport, all one needs to do is buy a ticket and not carry a prohibited item. There is nothing inherently secure about the area of the airport that is inside security, other than there are no overt weapons. To be fair, the TSA has a scale problem in that they are trying to protect the many, whereas the Secret Service is protecting only the few. However, the techniques are vastly different. Prohibiting liquids, testing shoes, and other arbitrary measures are backward-looking. They're attempting to prevent terrorist attacks that have already taken place. The best time to prevent a terrorist attack is during its planning process. By the time it gets to the execution phase, at an airport, then it's mostly too late. If the TSA operated more like the Secret Service, it would be focused on intelligence tools and training to prevent the next terrorist attack. Instead, they toil away daily performing the theater of security and relying on luck and passengers' willingness to intervene. Case in point, on November 1st, 2013, a man armed with a semi-automatic rifle walked into Terminal 3 at Los Angeles International Airport and shot several transportation security officers, killing Security Officer Gerardo Hernandez. The gunman then entered the quote-unquote secure section of the airport looking for people to murder. It wasn't until a Los Angeles Police Department tactical team showed up and confronted the gunman with lethal force did the threat become neutralized. Transportation security officers, like the public, had to find cover and flee from the gunman as they are neither trained, equipped, nor expected to confront gunmen. By comparison, the White House is considered a quote-unquote secure location. The security has been tested in recent years by gunmen armed with semi-automatic rifles who have attempted unauthorized access. These bad actors experience multiple levels of lethal and non-lethal force to prevent their unwarranted entry. Therefore, to say that an airport has a quote-unquote secure area is slightly concerning. The corporate corollary here is that risk monitoring tools are performing the same role as the TSA security. To say that a corporation has a risk management program simply because they have a risk monitoring tool is like saying there's a quote-unquote secure area in U.S. airports. This leads to a philosophical problem in the TSA's approach. The agency focuses on dangerous items rather than dangerous people or plots. Schneier goes on to advocate that airport security should be focused on intelligence agencies outside the airport. If government agencies and law enforcement are going to spy on their citizens, they might as well put that data to good use. With a greater focus on intelligence before a traveler gets to the airport, we can stop performing security theater and go back to the vastly more efficient airport security of pre-9/11 levels. The TSA suffers from another problem that corporate leaders should note: people performance. Given that transportation security officers are simply low-value commodity actors in a play, their management treats them as such. Officers' compensation ranks as one of the lowest in the U.S. government. Add that they spend the first 2 years on probation and are constantly being monitored, tested, and surveilled. As one officer put it, quote, "Everyone is always afraid of making a mistake and getting fired," unquote. It's not exactly the best culture. Correspondingly, the TSA also ranks bottom in job satisfaction among U.S. government agencies. To summarize, in the 20-plus years since the TSA's creation, the U.S. has spent nearly $150 billion, with a severe return on investment disparity. As easy as it is to highlight the TSA's ongoing failures, mismanagement, and colossal waste of money, this is a clarion call for corporations to change their approach and stop putting on their own theatrical productions. Instead, we need a risk strategy based in reality which, like the Secret Service, employs intelligence, tools, and people in a pragmatic way.